So my question is where do thoughts come from? Because they don't come from the personal self.
Yes. When you say that the personal self wants to take credit for the thoughts, you imply that there is a separate self that wants to claim. No, the separate self is itself a thought.
Right.
Just as the thought abstracts an object from the seamless flow of experience, the same process of thinking abstracts a separate self, and then says the separate self claims the thought that there is no separate self. The separate self is created, or rather imagined, through thinking.
Yes, I understand that, I think.
So where do thoughts come from?
So I can be...
From where everything comes from, out of consciousness.
Thank you. That was even just sitting in being.
It's not. Go on. Sorry. A thought came to me. Carry on. I'll.
No, that's all right. I want to hear your answer. I think you anticipate.
I was just going to improve, just being a dissatisfied Zen master wanting to improve, having noticed his mistake. When I said thoughts come from consciousness, as if consciousness were their source and thoughts somehow come out of them. No, nothing comes from consciousness. Nothing comes out of consciousness. Nothing exists. Remember, ex, sistere, to stand out from. Nothing exists. Nothing stands out from consciousness. A thought is just what consciousness looks like when viewed through the narrow lens of a finite mind at a particular moment. All things possible to be believed are an image of truth. The thought is just an image of consciousness. It doesn't arise from consciousness. Nothing arises from consciousness. It's just an image of consciousness.
So as we sit in being, and we're empty, and a thought or a feeling arises, I can watch it arise from the center of my being, and it could be habit, it could be conditioning, but it doesn't exist. The personal self doesn't exist, but I am trying to go back and find the source of the thought, and maybe that's just a waste of my time.
But you see, the reason ultimately you're having difficulty is because you're looking for the source of something that doesn't exist. And that's why you're frustrated. So as a concession, we can say, yes, the thought arises from consciousness, but that would suggest that there is a thought. Okay, to one who believes that there really is an object or a self or a thought, we can say, yes, the thought exists. It arises from consciousness. It exists in consciousness. It dissolves. That's a valid concession, but we're way beyond those concessions here. There is no thing called a thought. A thought is a subtle object, a mental object, that is imagined by thinking. Thinking is a process, not an object. And what is that process? It is the activity of consciousness. It is consciousness itself that takes the form of that activity. There's no object there called a thought. There's the process of thinking. And if you touch the stuff that thinking is made of, all you find is knowing or consciousness.
Okay, so now I think I understand that. However, I have been thinking of thoughts and feelings in terms of objects that appear on the blank screen.
That's an intermediary and lower level of understanding.
Okay, I got it from you. But I obviously am...
No, I often use that intermediary lower level of understanding in the early stages of the investigation for one who... So let's say we were to ask most people, what does your experience consist of? And let's say that they've explored their experience sufficiently to say my experience consists of thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions, rather than a body, a house, a chair. They've explored their experience enough to say, all I experience are thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. That's the sum total of their experience. So to that one, I'm not going to start talking about the one to them. No, okay, so I'm going to start where they are. Okay, that's true. You have thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. Now ask yourself the question, all of these appear and disappear. Yeah, they agree. Anything that appears and disappears must appear and disappear in something. What do they appear and disappear in? So now we're drawing attention to the fact of consciousness. Previously they just thought there are thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. Now they realize, there's a medium within which thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions appear. So at this stage of understanding, we now have thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions as objects appearing in consciousness. It's a legitimate step. We've gone one step from there are only, let's just call it thoughts and perceptions. It's easy. We've taken the step from there are just thoughts and perceptions. The next step, there are thoughts and perceptions appearing in consciousness. That's a valid step, and you got it from me in the early days. But then, as always, as soon as we've made a statement in the teaching, we then move on and contradict that statement. So it's true in relation to the previous belief, but it's not true in relation to the next stage of understanding. So then we say, okay, let's look more closely at these thoughts and perceptions appearing in consciousness, like fishes appearing in the ocean. You go into a thought. Do we ever find a discrete object called a thought, like a fish in the ocean, that you can pluck out of consciousness and say, look, here is a thought. Take the thought, what shall we have for dinner tonight? The what sounds in your mind. Where is the shall we have for dinner tonight? It's non-existent. And when the shall appears in your mind, where is the what? And where is the we have for dinner tonight? It's non-existent. So we never experience the whole thought. We experience understanding, but never the whole thought. A thought is a process of thinking, not an object. So we realize, no, there are no fishes in the ocean. There are currents and waves. There are no thoughts. There is a process of thinking. But even that, so as soon as we say that, that's true in relation to the previous belief. There are thoughts. Now we say no. That there's thinking appearing in the ocean of consciousness. And then we go closer. But okay, touch the stuff that thinking is made of. Thinking is not nothing. Something is there. And if you are experiencing it, you must be experiencing the stuff it's made of. You can't watch a movie without seeing the screen. So you're thinking, okay, touch it. When I say touch it, I mean experience. Don't just think about it, experience it. What is it made of? What's there when you touch thinking, knowing, consciousness? So that there isn't even thinking. There are no fishes in the ocean. There are no actual currents in the ocean. There's just the water.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. That's really helpful. That took me to a new understanding.
Okay, good. So you see that there are, each of these states, there are thoughts. That's a legitimate stage of understanding. I use it. I haven't used it this week because we started on day, and I very, very rarely use it now. I used to in the early days. We'd always start with, there are thoughts and perceptions. There are thoughts and perceptions appearing to consciousness. There are thoughts and perceptions appearing in consciousness. We used to go step by step. Some of the old timers remember those days. I don't need to do that anymore because you're all so mature. You've done your homework on YouTube. So here, we just start on the top of the mountain and then we take off. We never go down. We just take off. We start with the one and we stay there. So you'll almost never hear me say a thought is an object appearing in consciousness. I used to much more in the early days. I don't need to now. You're all so much. We've grown as a community, and the teaching has grown with it. The teaching has responded to all of you. I don't need to do that anymore. You don't need it. And very occasionally, if someone's here for the first time, they only heard about these matters 2 weeks ago, then I might say, okay, let's talk about thoughts appearing in consciousness. But this week we haven't needed to because none of you have asked me to. It's quite evident that none of you need me to do that.
Well, I just did, and so
well, okay.
I really do appreciate your answer, though. That is really helpful. So now I feel like I'm maybe have a foot on the launching pad, and I'll play with that. I'll definitely investigate that and play with it. So thank you.
Okay.